Good afternoon. I am a little bit unclear on how much you're seeing on your end, but I would like to begin because it's a few minutes late and I know we want to get through this. And I thank you for your patience. We have a new system for delivering webinars and I am familiarizing myself with it, so hopefully this won't be a problem going forward. If you do have any issues, you can contact me electronically by waving your hand. There's a function for that, and then we can trade private messages. But otherwise, until I hear from people, I'm going to assume that you are seeing what I hope you're seeing, and I'm going to go forward from there. So let me just begin. Again, my name, for those of you who were able to see the webinar that I delivered last week, my name is Bill McDonald. I am the Director of Academic Support, Academic Success, pardon me, here at Buffalo Law School. And I put up my information here. I'm going to be giving you information about myself and other people over the course of this webinar, because today's presentation is called Handling Bumps in the Road. We are very grateful, myself and all of my colleagues here at University of Buffalo School of Law, are grateful to our UB alumni and other members of the Buffalo and New York State legal communities who have generously offered to serve as mentors for our UB law students. And so because of that, we want to make sure that we provide you with all the support that you need to make this experience memorable and valuable to you and to your mentee. And so again, for that reason, today's seminar, Handling Bumps in the Road, now that the mentoring relationship has been in place for about 6 weeks, you may be at a place where you have found that there are some rough spots, or you may later on discover something that gets in the way or perhaps interferes or causes concern for you. And so we wanted to make sure that everyone was equipped with the tools that they might need. I'm going to talk today about some suggestions that can make the process, the mentoring process, go more smoothly when you have these kind of bumps. But I am also going to introduce you to the contact information, again, for myself, which you can see up on the screen now, and for the other members of our team, so that you have the right contact information for specific kinds of issues. So as I said, today we're talking about handling bumps in the road, and I want to talk about 3 main areas in which you might run into some problems. First are practical issues, just things that come up in the course of the mentoring relationship, not really about the second portion, which is interpersonal issues, things that have more to do about the components of the mentoring relationship, namely you and your mentee. And then I especially want to talk at the end about mentees at risk. You are in a position as mentors to be able to observe your mentees, maybe in an environment that because they're not in their law school, they may behave differently. You may be able to see things that we don't get to see here. And so we want to provide you with some help if you think that a mentee might be facing special stresses or difficulties. So first, let's talk about practical issues. And there are 3 main practical issues that I want to discuss today. First is, what happens when you are a mentor and you're trying to do a great job as a mentor, but you're actually facing some conflicts yourself outside of the mentor relationship? What I mean, of course, is that we're all very busy and you have a lot of responsibility in your work. You probably have responsibility for your families as well. And so sometimes it can get hard to integrate the mentor relationship with all of the other things that you have to do. And we don't want this to turn out to be an unpleasant experience for you because of any difficulties you might be having with these kinds of conflicts. So first, what I'd like to do is talk about how you can maybe alleviate some of those conflicts by taking advantage of the fact that you are, in fact, the very kind of person that your mentee wants to learn more about. You are an attorney, you are practicing, you are doing things that you may not think are interesting or exciting, but that your mentee may find very interesting. So if you find you have a lot on your plate, think about one of the ways that you can help bring your mentee in with you is to integrate your mentoring with your schedule. See if there are ways that you can ask your mentee to come and accompany with you, for example, if you're going to court, or if you are going on a visit to a site depending on what kind of work you're doing. You may be doing some kind of investigative work, you may be going to talk to people. These are the kinds of things that you can do that won't add to your schedule, but that will benefit the mentee as well. And if that solution is not going to be completely successful, and you find that you are in a place where you've gotten too busy, you've had a great time starting the mentoring relationship, but right now you need a little bit of extra space, probably the most important thing to remember is to be upfront and discuss this with your mentee. I think one of the biggest frustrations that we do hear from students who get frustrated, and of course not all students do, but those who are frustrated with the mentoring process often talk about how they feel like they don't have any idea when they're going to get to talk to their mentor next. They feel like their mentor has become too busy and doesn't have time for them, and the relationship has become kind of a cipher to them, a mystery. And so to the extent when you are busy that you are able to actually discuss this with the mentee, to tell them things have gotten very busy right now. I anticipate that in a couple of weeks I will have more time. Maybe give them alternative means of contacting you. Shoot me an email if you're having some difficulties or a specific issue you'd like to talk about. But it's maintaining that kind of contact and keeping the mentee informed that will enable the relationship to continue, even when it's a time where you may not be able to devote the kind of time that you would like to devote to the mentoring relationship. So I wanted to mention that first because that is an issue for some of our mentees. They do feel sometimes it starts with a bang and then ends up in a whimper, and they draw their own conclusions because they've never had a mentoring relationship before. So don't let them draw their own conclusions. Explain to them how things are going. Give them the sense that this is an ongoing relationship, and that can buy you a lot of time, buy you a lot of slack on their part. They will feel respected and try to help you manage all of your time issues. Now, of course, we also hear about this from the flip side. Sometimes when you're trying to be a strong mentor, you're trying to contact the mentor and get them to join you, get them to come meet with you, maybe discuss things over lunch, you're not getting responses from them. Either they are demurring, they're turning down your offers, or they're simply not being responsive at all and not responding to emails or telephone calls. And we also hear about this from some of our mentors, how that can be a disappointment, and we don't want that to be a disappointment for you. So a couple of suggestions. One is sort of logical. You can think about this. If you are trying to contact your mentor in a certain way, sometimes mentees will desensitize. So if you've been emailing them and they're getting the emails and then they're just sort of flagging it and talking, I'll take care of it later, and then they never get to it, maybe it's time to give them a telephone call. Vice versa, if you're making telephone calls, send them an email. Try to reach them through different means. That may be something that's different enough that will cause them to perk up and say, maybe I should respond to this. But you know, you're not here on campus. We are here on campus. And another means by which you can try to reach out to our students is to employ us. Again, we are here to make this process as simple as and enjoyable as it can be for you. And so if you're having trouble contacting your mentee, and we know that you really are doing this in good faith, you want to be a good part of their experience here, if they are what is standing in the way because you can't get in touch with them, then please solicit our help. If students are unresponsive, please feel free to contact Dean Lisa Patterson. She's the Vice Dean for Career Services, and I've put her contact information here on the slides. And of course, these slides in this video presentation will be available on our mentoring website here at UB Law, the UB Law website. We have a mentoring website specifically set up to capture all of this information. So, of course, you can copy this down now, but if you don't have it now, you're not in a position to copy this down, you will be able to go back to our website to get this information. And please consider Lisa to be a contact for you when you're concerned that a student is not participating fully in the relationship. Sometimes it does require a different way of reaching out to the student, and we can be here to provide that. One more area in which there may just be practical issues that you want to sort of consider when you're working on your mentoring relationship. We've tried to match people up with mentors and mentees who have some similarities, something that brings them together. So for example, students are interested in practicing criminal law. We may try to match them up with someone who is currently practicing criminal law. Having said that, we're not always able to match every single aspect of a person's background or experience with another person in the mentoring arena. And so this is effectively a practical issue. It's something that we don't really have any control over once we've made these initial matches, but sometimes that can be an issue in the mentoring relationship. You're working with somebody whose experiences are very different from you. You may get the sense that they feel uncomfortable because you have different experiences and different background, or you personally might feel like, I don't know how to talk with this person, to relate to this person because they have differences. And these can be, of course, differences as basic as gender differences, ethnic differences, socioeconomic differences, but it could also be just experiences, people who have gone through a different kind of schooling. Maybe you went straight from college into law school and then started practicing, and you're dealing with a mentee who has taken some time off and traveled the world and has a different way of looking at things. So a couple of things to suggest to help deal with this so that it doesn't actually become a source of conflict, but maybe a source for even a better relationship, something more helpful for both of you. First of all, you are the experienced person. That's why we've asked you to be mentors, and your experiences therefore are valuable, even if in some cases they are different from the experiences of your mentees. So, of course, you want to be able to talk about your own experiences, and you want to be able to offer your perspective, which may be a different perspective from one they've seen before. And in many cases, that can be incredibly helpful for a mentee to hear something that's different from a perspective they've seen in the past. When you're offering that perspective, though, and you should be generous, you should be fairly free about talking about what your experiences have been. But when you do talk about your own experiences, talk about it without any judgment. Don't claim that your experiences were particularly better or worse. Don't give the impression that you're saying that there's only one way to get to where you are. Offer it in the sense and in the hope that a student will see that there are many paths through the law. This is one of those paths. It may be different from what they've experienced or what they've known in their lives. But at the same time, that can be valuable to them. It can broaden their own horizons. And again, if you offer it in that sort of non-judgmental way, they won't feel defensive or threatened, or they won't block it out so much as something that they can't relate to. And, when you're dealing with people, again, whose experiences are different from yours, you should also be open about asking about experiences without presumption, without presuming, for example, that if you're a male attorney and you're talking to a female law student, you don't have to ask them about their experiences as a woman in the law, presuming that they've had certain experiences. They may have had those experiences, and that may be a point from which you can have a discussion. But when you make presumptions like that, then you may put them in a position where they feel they have to give a certain kind of answer, or that you've limited the discussion to certain topics. So that kind of openness is very helpful and can be very important to a student who is looking up to you and is hoping to get some kind of touchstone, some kind of perspective on the work that you do. But again, when you're both talking about yourself and asking about them, try to do it in a very even-handed way so that they can feel like they can open up about these things, because those kinds of differences can in fact be important to talk about in a mentoring relationship. So we've talked about some practical issues that can affect a mentoring relationship. I want to move on now to some personal issues. So when we talk about personal issues, from the point of view of the mentor, we're often thinking about, okay, how is this mentee appearing to me? How is this mentee's way of being affecting the relationship and making me uncomfortable? So I want to talk about some things that you can keep in mind in different situations, again, because we want this experience to be as helpful and enjoyable to you as possible. So first of all, lack of professionalism, that's something that we do hear about from mentors with some regularity. I wouldn't say that every single law student or even a majority of law students are suffering from this issue. But people who are coming to law school, coming out of college, they've made presumptions about the way that they should behave in the professional world that rubs their mentors the wrong way. And part of it may be generational, part of it may just be inexperience. But if you have a mentee who you feel is not behaving in a professional way, maybe showing up late for your appointments, or even canceling your appointments without giving any forewarning or explanation, Maybe if you are interacting with them at a luncheon, for example, and you feel that their behavior is not the kind of behavior that you would want someone to exhibit if they were having a professional lunch with, say, a client. These are things that may be troublesome to you, but in truth, they may not even be something that occurs to the student. This may be something that they've never had to think about or deal with before. So, two things that you can do that will actually help them while making you feel more comfortable about the student themselves. First of all, be direct. If you see that some behavior is not professional, is troublesome to you as a professional, you should feel free to point that out. Of course, in a gentle and thoughtful way. But for example, if your mentee is constantly arriving late for your appointments, you should say to them, that's actually unprofessional behavior. I know that amongst friends, it's fine if you say you're going to be there at 11, you show up at 11:15, no big deal. But punctuality is very important. And then, while you're explaining to them what's important and why professionalism matters, or what matters in professionalism, you want to go on to explain why. It's generally true that people are more responsive to this kind of correctional instruction if they're given some understanding of why it matters. And I think that research shows that it's particularly true with the most recent generation. People nowadays tend to want to know why they're being expected to do things. They question, they ask, don't just say, do this because I say so. I want to know what the reason for it is. So again, if you were talking about timeliness as a professional aspect, you might point out it's important not just as a sign of respect that you respect the other person's time, that you consider that they made an appointment for you, but that this may have an effect on a person's entire day. If you show up late for an appointment, that person's whole schedule might be disrupted. Lawyers sell their time in many cases. And so it actually has a practical effect that students can see and appreciate and come to take that into account. So when you are discussing anything about lack of professionalism or anything that the student is doing that makes you feel uncomfortable or you think is not appropriate, again, be direct about it, but explain to them why you think it matters. Another interpersonal issue that sometimes comes up is an intensity of attachment between the mentor and mentee that the mentor may not be entirely comfortable with. Especially if the mentee is particularly interested in the work that you're doing, they may want to be meeting with you more often, more frequently than you're able to provide them time for. And of course, there's always possibilities that they may come to think of you as sort of a primary touchstone as they enter into the law. And focus on you to an extent where you feel like that's not warranted, given the amount that you have committed into the mentoring relationship. And you don't want to feel uncomfortable when you are working with people that you really want them to get a lot out of you, but you don't want to feel like they're taking a lot out of you at the same time. So this kind of situation, I think, often happens unconsciously. Students may not be aware that that kind of intensity is not appropriate in the mentoring relationship. So that's certainly another thing that you want to be upfront with them about. But if you are feeling that there are some boundaries being crossed, if a person is contacting you at inappropriate times or too frequently, then you may just have to draw a line. You need to be upfront and say, look, I have some boundaries, there are some limitations of this relationship. I want this relationship to be successful, but in order for it to be successful, we have to find some ways to draw some limits. And again, oftentimes it's because students don't realize that they're overstepping those limits, and that if you can say that to them professionally and with respect, they will respect it and they will feel respected and they'll be able to respond. So you should feel free, in order to sort of preserve yourself as an effective mentor, to be able to push back on students in that way. And then finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about this idea of incompatibility. Sometimes mentors and mentees, we try to match people who have interest, and often we've built some really strong relationships out of that. But occasionally you may be matched with somebody that you just feel, is not on the same page as you. You're not on the same wavelength. Now, this is different from, say, the issue of lack of professionalism, where you wish they had grown to a certain point. You're there to help them get to that point. So hopefully, if you've got that kind of incompatibility, you should think of it as a project. You're there to try to help them improve. And so while it may be frustrating at first, I think you can use that as a way to focus your attention on helping them to develop to a place where they will be a better lawyer in the future. There's also an argument that if it's another kind of incompatibility, you're just not getting along with this person and not the kind of person you would choose to, say, go to a bar with, there's an argument that, that doesn't really matter, that in the real world, you have to learn to get along with people that you wouldn't choose to invite over to your house for dinner. And so by doing so with your mentor or mentee, then you are showing them by example that people can behave professionally and can even teach each other, even if they're not hitting it off on a personal one-to-one level basis. But on the other hand, we do want these relationships to be rewarding and satisfying. And if you find that that level of incompatibility has reached a point where you really feel that it's not working out, that there's some disrespect, that there's some antagonism, that there's something about that level of incompatibility that makes you think that the relationship itself is being affected and that your enjoyment and appreciation of that relationship is also being negatively affected, then you should feel free to contact us. We have done this in the past where we've reassigned people who have been assigned to mentees that didn't quite match up. And again, Lisa Patterson is the person that you should feel free to contact in that kind of a situation. Again, we don't want you to just automatically give up on mentees if there's one little bump in the road, but we also don't want you to feel like we don't have a system in place to help people get matched up with other students who they might find to be more compatible, a better relationship. So that system is in place as well. And finally, last thing I want to talk about today, mentees at risk, okay? You're in a unique position, as I said, being able to observe our students in different situations. And so you may notice or suspect that a student is in some kind of trouble. And I want to talk about 3 different areas in which it would be appropriate for you to interact with the students on this level. So first of all, academics. I am the Director of Academic Success, and you should feel free, if you're talking with your students and you're getting the sense that they are not doing as well in class as they could be, either because when they're talking to you, they may be exhibiting indications that they don't seem to be getting things as well as they think they are, or if they're actually unhappy with their performance, but they haven't found a reason or a way to reach out for help here. You should feel free to contact me if you have some concerns about how a student is doing, if they seem to be unhappy with their own performance, or if there's something that you question about whether their performance is going as well as it could be. I am happy to talk with you. I'm happy to make contact with students. Either I can tell them that it was at your direction, or I can simply contact them myself and say, hey, I'm wondering if you're having any difficulties. I want you to feel that I'm a resource that can help you with that. And you're really a resource for us, because we don't always know when a student is struggling until after maybe some kind of problem comes up in the grades, and we want to forestall that. We want to help them when the help really matters. Another area that you can be particularly helpful in helping students at risk is in the area of ethics. That's very important, of course. When you're applying for your bar examination, your bar entry, you do need to, pass your character and fitness examination. And so we of course are teaching legal ethics, professional responsibility here in law school. But in the real world, sometimes students don't realize that they are doing things that might be seen to be questionable later on. And again, you're in a position where if you see something is happening, you're a person that hopefully they respect, they look up to, and you should feel free to say to them, hey, what you're doing isn't necessarily the smartest thing. Maybe you need to reconsider whether that's the appropriate behavior. So hearing it from you could be particularly meaningful. And so we certainly do want you to feel that that is fair game. You're not there just to teach them about how to prepare a memorandum or how to talk to a judge, but to develop that aspect of their professionalism as well. And then finally, one thing that may be of concern, not to everybody, but if it does become of concern, it can be a particular concern, is the health and safety of the students. That's something, of course, we're very concerned with here. And we have various means within the school to be aware of if students seem to be having difficulty whether it's physical health, emotional health, whether family circumstances have become overwhelming. These are all things we really try to attend to and try to offer support to students for. But again, sometimes students aren't even aware that they're under this kind of stress, or they take it as normal. Sometimes students hide this from their teachers and their fellow students here. So if that's something that you see, we don't expect you to intervene. Okay, this is not a situation where if you think a student is feeling overwhelmed, maybe suffering from anxiety, you can imagine any of a number of situations where students really just could use some kind of intervention. You don't have to be the person to intervene, but you could be a person to help guide them to help. It would certainly be appropriate if you noticed a student, and especially a student who may not recognize that what they're experiencing is not normal, is not something they should have to deal with themselves. You should feel free to help refer them to us, to the resources that we have here. And so you can either refer them directly, or you could contact our Vice Dean of Student Affairs, Bernadette Gargano, and here's her contact information. You can contact her and say, I'm a little concerned about this student. And again, it could be from a gamut of things. You could be concerned about their physical health, about anxiety or depression. You could be concerned that maybe there's been a death in the family and it seems to be affecting them negatively. All of that are fair game. That's the kind of thing that we like to help our students with. And again, you shouldn't feel that that's your responsibility, although of course, if it's something that you feel that you could help with, you're welcome to do so. But we would certainly appreciate that you could guide them to us either directly or by letting us know that we might want to make touch with them. So that brings us then to the end of our presentation today. I hope it's been helpful. Sorry that at the beginning seemed to be a little out of control with the software, but we're getting better each time, and hopefully you'll be able to tune in for our third presentation, which will be in 2 weeks. I'm looking forward to delivering that, and thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon.